Hey guys, it's Vince and Drew with Power 5 Fanatics coming at you. It's Tuesday and we're ready to do our top 25 going into week
Six.
I guess we're going into week 6 now. It's amazing. We're about
Gosh, man.
almost halfway
It's
done.
got to slow down a little bit.
Yeah,
But
almost.
It won't slow down, so.
Well, we're going to enjoy talking about it while it's flying by.
Yeah. It is fun to talk about.
Yeah, and this week we got at least one change.
A little bit of a mix-up.
In the top 7, it's kind of been pretty consistent. But after Clemson's really
win.
almost a debacle,
Right.
almost, and it's just
We got to give North Carolina some credit, though.
yeah, and
That last play call wasn't very good, where they went. Was an
Clemson's
option
not
play.
looking like the number 1 team anymore.
But yeah, they're
man.
not. I mean,
Their offense is suspect. Their defense has still been playing pretty good, but Trevor Lawrence, I think he only has 8 touchdowns and he has 4 or 5 picks. It's just they're not looking like the top team. We're not saying they're not a top 4 team because they are, but we're moving them out of number 1. We're bringing Alabama up.
Well, and their kind of their marquee win up to this point was the A&M win, and A&M's kind of been struggling lately.
Yeah.
They struggle with Arkansas, which that's a game they always struggle with. So I'm
You know
not going to put too much pressure on them for that. But
in the big scheme of things, it doesn't matter a whole lot. If you're in the top 4, you're fine. But
right.
anyways, 2, we moved up Ohio State. I tell you, they've been one of the more impressive schools this year, this football season, because we thought maybe the offense would take a step back. It hasn't.
Yeah.
It's probably better now than it was last year, which is hard to believe. And their defense just been rock
It's a
solid.
lot
Their
better than
defense
it
has
was
been as
last year.
good. It's been a top 5, I would say.
They're pushing Alabama for number 1 right now.
Yeah, they are.
It's,
I mean, they just look really good.
Alabama is going to have to start really showing out. And I know they have a tough schedule because they play some good teams. They get an opportunity to prove themselves against
Ohio State,
LSU, Auburn.
their defense
different
really
teams.
looked better than Alabama's Ohio State.
But Ohio State might be the most complete team
Yeah.
of the whole college football.
That's how good. I
landscape.
mean, anybody that beats Nebraska at Lincoln 48-7.
And not that Nebraska's some powerhouse
No, but
program,
still, that's
the
just-
way they're going about winning these games.
That game
is
was over with
incredibly impressive.
early.
And you could just tell by watching them. Their corners were, absolutely elite. Their defensive line played incredible. Their run game, they were just busting holes open. They just looked way better than Nebraska did on that field. So
I agree.
It was incredibly impressive the way they won that game.
Okay, 3 is where we dropped Clemson. And, hey, we're not saying they're not good. We just think they maybe were a little overrated going into the season. They got a lot of youngsters on the team. I think maybe the maturity hasn't quite gotten there for some of them. So, anyways, they got it done. They won, and and it seemed like every year you're going to have a close game. Somebody
Right.
is, and that may be, maybe a wake up call for them. Maybe the last close game they have.
Well, and I think there's been a little bit of an overreaction from some people on that win that they had. They still won the game. They just they just haven't looked as good as they did last year.
Especially their offense.
Yeah.
4, we got LSU. One of the other surprise teams, I would say. Even though they were off, they sure didn't. I think that's where we had them last week. We either had them at 3 or 4, but another, I would say, surprise team just from the standpoint their offense is way better than anybody thought. Another team that was off last week, but they're still there, is Georgia, of course. And I don't know I don't even know who they're playing this week. We haven't looked at the week 6 lineup, if they got a tough game or not, but they've looked every bit, a top 5 team. Oklahoma, Jalen Hurts continues his Heisman Trophy run. And they just really were too much for Texas Tech all the way around it. I mean, Tech made some mistakes, and there was a few bad calls, I would say, that Oklahoma got away with, but not that it really mattered. 55-16, that's pretty impressive.
They asserted their dominance, and this was. I'm still not gonna say they have, one of the better defenses in the Big 12 because I don't think they do. But their defense has been a lot better this season.
It
than
has
it was
been
last
in the
year.
last couple years.
And they got some guys. I looked at a mock draft. They got a few guys in that defense that are projected first, second round picks. Neville Gallimore is one of them.
Yeah.
I think Kenneth Murray.
This might be the year that
So-
Oklahoma gets it done in the playoffs, and if it is, it's
Yeah.
going to be because of their defense.
Yeah. They got a
7,
legitimate team.
we got Wisconsin. They got it done this week against Northwestern, but their offense gives me a little bit of a concern at times. Their defense is still just rock solid. I mean,
Yeah.
they only they gave up 15 to Northwestern, and what they give up to Michigan. 14.
Yeah.
So that's what they've given up. They've given up under 30 points for the entire year.
The defense has been great. What's been impressive was their offense. This week, their passing game was
took
kind
a little
of
step
exposed.
back. Yeah, I think they only had
Cohen
about
had
100.
120 passing
Yeah.
yards, and I thought that maybe they had that quarterback position squared away. This week kind of made me rethink that a little bit, and I did pick Northwestern to cover that spread.
They still have the best running back
But,
in the nation, and they probably have the best defense.
Yeah, I just
so
agree.
that right there is gonna put you in the conversation.
Right.
8, we got another SEC school. No surprise here. Auburn. They beat Mississippi State pretty bad. I mean,
Yeah.
they pretty much more than doubled up their points,
It was
56-3.
It was almost over, like with 10 minutes left in the first quarter. It
Yeah.
seemed like.
Another somewhat surprise team, just because they're kind of like LSU. They're a lot like LSU. Their offense is better than we thought it was going to be, and it's really give them a shot where they might actually have a. They might have a shot in the SEC West. The SEC West is, I mean, of course, it's always tough, but
It's going to be interesting to see.
It's getting tougher as the year goes
Obviously, Alabama's the favorite out of the West, but it's going to be interesting to see this year because
I know.
LSU and Auburn
They've
are
closed the gap
legitimate,
a little bit on Bama.
competition there. So
Staying in the top 10, we got Texas. Of course, they were off this week. Definitely, we agree they are a top 10 team at this point.
Oklahoma State's continuing to look pretty good, and Texas has. I mean, they always kind of struggle with teams that they're superior than, but they found a way to win, and they just look. Their offense is, really good. Their receivers are incredible. So I definitely think that they're a top 10 team.
Yeah, I do
as well.
too. The final in the top 10 is Penn State. We've moved them up, and the reason they're starting to look very legit at this point. Mainly their offense and their defense. I mean, they blanked Maryland 59-0. Maryland is probably the biggest question mark team I've seen.
I've never seen that.
I haven't either. I don't think it's ever happened where they
put
scored 77, I think, week 1.
Yeah.
62 week 2.
They scored like 100.
I think they only scored 27 week 3, and then they scored 0 week 4.
No, they scored like 17.
17 week 3, and then
0.
So
they went from
they're trending
like,
downwards, and there's no place to go now. You can't score negative points.
I don't know if I've ever seen a team start off scoring 140 points in the first 2 weeks, and then with no major injuries, score 17 points in the next 2 weeks.
The funny thing is, if you look at the top or their first 4 games, it may still be the best 4 games they've ever had in Maryland history as far as points scored. I'm not joking.
Maybe so.
It may be if you add the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, they've scored like 170 points.
They're a puzzle, so
they're hard to figure out. Yeah.
But Penn State really put their thumb down on them, and their quarterbacks just couldn't get anything done. I think they were shuffling a couple of quarterbacks and trying to get something going, but it just wasn't working. 11, we got Notre Dame. Of course, they had a big game against Virginia, and
they did what they had to do.
Yeah, they really looked good in that game. That was one that some people were thinking might be an upset special because they might be just a letdown after the Georgia loss. They just seemed like they spent so much energy in that game, really making it close and having a shot to win. But they didn't have a letdown at all. They took care of Virginia, 35-20, pretty good win, even though it was at home. 12, we got Florida. They beat an inferior opponent.
Towson? Is that what it was?
Towson, yeah.
What was
I almost wrote Towson up here at 12. We'll put Florida. Anyways, if you look at the final score, it doesn't look like they beat them as bad as you would think. They did beat them 38-0, but look, Florida is better, I think, than they looked early in the year, but I think they're still going to have a tough time with Georgia and the SEC East and just the SEC overall. I'm not saying they're not going to have a great year because they're having one right now, but we think they belong at 12. 13, it was a team that was off, but it's the first Pac-12 team, Oregon. And
they've just continued to kind of keep rolling.
As we keep talking about the Pac-12, it's how there's not really, it doesn't seem like there's a great team, but
Oregon could be one.
There's 4 or 5 teams, though, that are really good, and they're beating each other up, and that's what's happened. Everybody's got a loss at this point.
Well, and Oregon's one loss is looking
against
better.
Auburn, yeah.
I mean, Auburn's continuing to look good, and the first couple weeks I wasn't sold on Auburn, but I'm starting to get there now with them, and that they kept that close. In fact, I felt like they dominated that game for large portions of it. It was just, Bo Nix, they had a great second half, Auburn did, and they won that game.
Yeah.
So Oregon,
well, we think Oregon's still the best team in the Pac-12, but
right
it's very close. 14, we got Iowa, and they're kind of the dark horse
West team,
the one that nobody talks about really.
Right.
But they're undefeated. They beat Middle Tennessee State 48-3, and
they play Michigan this week, too.
I know. I mean, there's no telling what's the deal with that. They may win the Big Ten West.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, would I say Wisconsin's better than they are? Yeah, but we still got a lot of season left, and with them, it's really they're kind of the team nobody's talking about.
Right. 15,
we got who we consider the second best Pac-12 team. And going back to the Pac-12, well, Washington, they beat Stanford 28-14.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think there's going to be a Pac-12 team in the playoff again this year, just from the fact they're going to beat each other up, and it's probably going to be a 2-loss team winning that conference.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of
Stanford's pretty much
Big 12
folded.
Right now.
I mean, they're done. Stanford,
This is probably Stanford's worst year in a
I
long
know.
time.
They're
not very good this year.
They've just kind of given up, and they don't have any offense this year at all.
Yeah.
Then we got the team that everybody's been busting on.
Michigan.
And deservedly so in some areas, especially after the debacle with Wisconsin. But they bounced back nicely. I guess Rutgers is the cure for any sickness that you may have.
Yeah.
52-0. That was a good way to get back for Michigan. And just like I said last week, I wouldn't totally count Michigan out at this point, but that was a way to get back on track.
Yeah.
17, we got our first group of 5 representative, Boise State. I believe they were off, I believe, this last week. And I still think they're the best group of 5 team at this point. There's about 3 of them that we're going to talk about. But next, we got Wake Forest making a move. So we finally have 2 ACC teams in the top 20.
Right.
We moved in. I think we had them at 23 last week, I believe. But you know what? They're looking pretty darn good, and they're doing just what they got to do to get it done. They're not flashy. They don't. They haven't really beat anybody really bad, but they just keep winning.
Right.
And who knows? They may. Well, I guess Clemson plays them this year.
I believe so.
Honestly, I don't know.
I could see Wake Forest getting to 10 wins this year.
Yeah. Regardless, though, if they don't, they'd play them in the championship. Yeah. So there's no telling what's going to happen with Wake Forest. 19, we got UCF. They bounced back nicely. Dylan Gabriel had a huge game again. He's quite a freshman quarterback they got. I think he had another 3 touchdown game. So
yeah,
he bounced back nicely.
They keep reloading at UCF on the quarterback.
Yeah, no
position.
joke. That's Utah, barely. The four-letter word, I had a hard time spelling it.
Yeah.
There's our third representative from the Pac-12.
And they beat one of our top 20 teams from last week, USC. What was the score? 38 to 13?
Yeah, it was a pretty good beatdown Utah gave them.
I think, Utah, they got beat by, who was it a few weeks ago? It was, no, they lost to USC. Who did they beat last week? I cannot remember.
Yeah.
Because they lost to USC. But
they bounced back nicely anyway.
I think Utah kind of had a weird week when they played USC. I do think they're a really good team. So we'll see how the rest of their season progresses.
21, we got SMU in here, and I think they deserve it. Their offense, I think, is about as good as anybody's.
Yeah.
And what's his name? Buechele.
Shane Buechele, yeah.
Has really evolved into
Great passer.
A great passer. I mean, he really has.
Yeah.
And he's in a different
dimes.
offense than he was at UT. I guess he's
It's a more
Sonny
fitting
Dykes
offense.
is going to be more of
It fits him better there.
it's going to be more of an open air raid
concept. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
SMU's looking good. I mean, I like them a lot,
Yeah.
and it's their best record they've had, I think, since '83.
84 or something.
Yeah.
That right after the death penalty,
Well, that was actually before the death
was
penalty.
it?
Yeah, the
Wow.
death penalty was like '86.
That's right.
But anyways, if you're an old guy like me, then you remember how good SMU football was 35 years ago, and it looks like they're back. It's pretty impressive.
It's amazing that it's been that long since they've been in the top 25.
Yeah, they might have been in the top 25 at one point, but they haven't been. What are they? 4-0 or 5-0? 5-0. They haven't been that since '83. So this is the best team they've had in 35 years. 22, we got Oklahoma State.
Yep.
And they beat Kansas State
Kansas
this last
State,
week.
they rebounded. Chuba Hubbard's a beast. He should be on Heisman watch.
Yeah.
He have like 300 plus rushing yards.
Yeah, I still think Jonathan Taylor has more yards than he does.
He might.
But
I don't know if he does actually.
maybe he doesn't.
I mean, Chuba Hubbard's.
They've both been great.
Yeah.
And it's 1 and 2 as far as
Right.
running back production by far this year.
Yeah.
Their offense is just really good. Of course, it usually is. 23, we got another Pac-12 school. Again, these schools are just beating each other up. And it's funny with that conference because I consider it one of the weaker conferences, but you may have more teams up here than outside the SEC, maybe than any of them when we get done here in a second. But they were off last week, but we definitely think they're top 25 material. Speaking of the Pac-12, we got Arizona State next. I'm just really kind of liking the Pac-12 right now.
They're just a deep conference.
Top to bottom, outside of Oregon State, it's in Stanford. I mean, outside of those two programs, it's pretty solid right now.
I mean, Arizona, they might have some issues.
Well, they won this week. Arizona did.
That's true.
They beat UCLA. Yeah,
Right.
UCLA
That's
would be
right.
another one
2017.
that would be another one that we're rebuilding.
That's
here.
right, yeah.
But the other schools have been really solid. And then last 25, we put Michigan State in. Their offense looked better this week, and their defense has still been good.
If you would have told me that Indiana put 31 up on Michigan State, I probably would have thought they would have lost the game.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Their offense, I think that's the biggest reason I'm putting them up here because their offense is looking better.
Finally taking the right steps forward.
And that's what they've been missing.
They did give up a lot.
And Indiana's not a bad.
And they're not a bad team.
Not at all. No.
I know they got blasted by.
No, I
Ohio
could see
State,
them making a bowl game.
Yeah.
Indiana. Guys, that's our top 25. It's not going to match everybody's, but we had a few little changes. But we think it's a pretty solid top 25.
Yeah.
And anyway, we're looking forward to going to this next weekend of college football. We're going to have more videos coming up here in the next couple days. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. We appreciate you watching. Thanks.
Thanks.